there. Welcome to another edition of StarCast Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Starr, and I thought it was important to talk about this topic coming because business is good, right? For wellness and fitness and spa. And when business is good, businesses are for sale. But so many people that work in our industry don't know how to sell their business. And I thought, let's talk to someone that's an expert. So I've invited Mitch McGinley to join us today. Welcome, Mitch.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me.
Mitch is the founder and president of Boutique Fitness Broker, and he is also a member of the San Diego Business Advisors. Mitch, could you explain what's the difference between those two things?
Yes, so Boutique Fitness Broker is my company, but much like real estate, we have to hang our hats on a brokerage with the state. And so SD Business Advisors is the brokerage where I hang my hat. There's 18 different agents in my office. We all sell all kinds of business. But I'm one of the only ones that has a specific niche where I specialize in selling, boutique fitness.
Well, lucky for us, there is someone like you that specializes in selling this, and we'll get into why this is a challenge. But when I met you, we were both consultants with MindBody. And saw right away, of course, your specialty is selling businesses. And it's like, wow, there's a guy that just does this and makes a living. And how long have you been doing that?
I started this right after we sold our yoga studio, which was beginning of 2019. Mm-hmm. So it's been almost 5 years.
Oh, wow. Well, let's go back for the audience a little bit, Mitch, into your journey into the wellness field. When you grew up, you probably didn't think you'd be a fitness broker. What was your plan?
No, definitely not. It's crazy. Looking backwards, it kind of makes sense, but never could have predicted this. So real quick, my undergraduate degree was in psych. I thought I was going to be a psychologist. I bailed on a clinical PhD program at the last minute and went into hotel management.
That's a big switch.
It is and it isn't. There's a lot of similarities, and some of these points are clear through lines in my whole career. But I'm really good at calming people down and being empathetic. And so I think those are the two skills that have helped me thrive no matter what my role is. And so when I worked in hotels, I was really good at working at the front desk and solving issues and taking frustrating situations and making them better for people. From there, I a couple years into it, I decided that I was tired of getting yelled at, and so I switched to the accounting department.
We're behind the scenes, not at the front desk, right?
Yeah, 8-hour days instead of 12-hour days, and comfy chair and just spreadsheets. And then I went to school at night to get an MBA. And so I did both of those things at the same time. And when I did that, I realized by working in accounting, actually, that I didn't want to be a manager again, that I wanted to be an owner. And it was really clear to me in that moment. And so I went to my GM, I told him that, and he actually hooked me up with somebody who was an entrepreneur who was starting a business where he was buying hotels, fixing them up, and so that was my first introduction to business transactions. And he taught me a lot about commercial real estate and the transactional, while I was also responsible for running the hotels. And so I did that for 2 years. You
learned a lot. You had an MBA going on and another graduate education in hotel operations management.
Right. And one of those was infinitely more valuable. Having the experience of being in a startup, running a business is so much more valuable to me anyway. But
there's book learning and then there's you did it, right? And you sort of need both, but there's nothing like being in the trenches, right?
Nothing. And so, for every business owner that's in this industry, they have a master's degree in business. They have done all of these things. And so at that point, when I decided that I was kind of tired of running these hotels again, working really, really long hours, my cell phone was literally taped on the front desk at the hotel. We got presented with the opportunity to buy our favorite yoga studio. And yoga was something that my wife and I had always been into. She's a phenomenal yoga teacher, among many other things. And she is a really talented person and came from a family. Her mom actually owned a boutique fitness business in New Jersey that's about to celebrate its 40th anniversary. And
What?
so we had that inspiration from my mother-in-law. Um, and we really wanted to do it. And so it was a perfect opportunity. We felt like the timing was right. I was tired of my job. It was our favorite studio. It wasn't doing great. And so, it was pretty much like breaking even. And we decided to go for it. We bought it. The day after we bought it, we found out we were pregnant with our
No
first child.
way.
Yeah, I mean, these things that like you could only the story writes itself. Here I am thinking like what a great father I am. I just quit my job with equity in hotels and benefits to own a yoga studio that's not making any money. Um, but we did really well with it, and we ended up selling it 6 years later for 5 times what we bought it for.
I'll say
Uh,
that's pretty good.
yeah, and we were really proud, and that community is still thriving today. Which we're also really happy about. And, ever since then, I've just turned my focus to helping other people in this industry with buying and selling because it's, until you've gone through it, why would you ever know anything about it? And at the same time, it should be your biggest payday. And so it's like one of the most fragile things for everybody in this industry to care about and focus on, at least like kind of have a plan for. And there's a number of things that I can share that are pretty straightforward and simple that will help everyone from this point until they're ready to sell, as long as it's just kind of brewing in the back of your brain.
Right. Well, let me ask you, when you went through the process of buying your studio and then selling it, who did you turn to for help?
I did it myself. And fortunately, it was because I had had the experience with buying and selling hotels where I kind of got to sit on the sideline and watch.
Mhm.
Also, my older brother is in M&A for an investment bank, and he's always been one of my biggest advocates, mentors, best friend. Um, and so he was a huge resource for me, my whole life, but also in this regard.
That's good.
And
So
he's doing like
you had the yoga studio 5 years,
6.
6 years, and you sold it. And then, I mean, did you see a way forward? And I mean, obviously, this side business of selling other people's businesses was happening concurrently.
It was actually one and then the other. So when you and I first met as mind body consultants, that I started while we still owned the studio. So we bought our studio in 2013. In 2016, I started working with Laura Monkholm, who's a mutual friend, the founder of Walla. Um, I had actually hired her to help us with our sales funnel at our yoga studio. And when we started working together, she was like, "You're really good at this. I could use your help. Will you help me with consulting?" And so I was excited about that. And I went through MindBody's, certified consultant course, which you pay a couple $1,000. As long as you do the work, they give you their stamp of approval.
Mhm.
But that opened us up to the whole network of MindBody clients. And I think at that time they had like 60,000 clients. And
That's
so
a
I
lot.
started getting, yeah, right. I don't think it's that much anymore, but I started getting access to presenting at their conferences and MindBody University, where we travel around the world and get to teach people about being better studio owners.
Mhm.
And so that was a really wonderful opportunity for me to grow my network and interact with studio owners, spa owners all over the world. And that's what allowed me, after we sold our studio, to then sort of pivot my focus to be the guy within that community who helps people sell.
So how did you get your first customer to sell?
Um, it was actually my very first one came from the business brokerage that I signed with. Um, it was a personal training gym in Solana Beach. I live in San Diego. It's just north of me. Um, and they had reached out to the company at that point and wanted to sell. And as I was coming on, it was a perfect lead for me. And so they just handed it to me, and fortunately, I was able to make it happen about 4 months after I got licensed.
Mhm. So let's talk about what you need to know. I mean, for listeners who own a fitness business, a spa, a salon, something wellness oriented, what's sort of the framework that they should be thinking about, Mitch, or how would you explain it to them if they're thinking, well, I would like an exit strategy? And let's talk about that also. I mean, you said your payday's at the end. Do you see that often where people are not taking money out during the course of running the business, but they sell it for a profit?
They're parallel to each other. So I think the best place to start is with valuations and how do I value my business?
Okay.
And an asterisk here that valuations are opinions and everyone can have one. And so, a lot of times sellers in particular feel like their business is worth more to them than it is to sell to
They
someone else.
always do. Of course, they think it's worth more, right?
Yeah, and that's okay. That's a very normal feeling. But when an owner decides that they're ready to sell, you have to be willing to accept what someone is offering in order
Right.
to sell.
What
And
they're willing to pay is what it's worth, right?
right, exactly. And so that's the harsh truth. Your business is worth what someone is willing to pay for it. And if it's worth more than that to you, then you just choose not to sell.
Right.
But for everyone in the world, at some point you will have to exit your business, no matter what. Like it's gonna happen. And so having a plan for it is really important. And honestly, realizing the value of what you've created and getting paid for it in the end when you're done is one of the most rewarding things that I get to be a part of. And so to jump back to valuations are usually a function of profit. And so the easiest way to describe it is it's generally 2 to 3 times a year's worth of profit. Now, profit can be interpreted differently.
Mhm.
You might say EBITDA or cash flow or net income. And we use the term seller's discretionary earnings, which is meant to add back anything that is not uh, significant to the operation of the business. So things like car payments, meals, travel, continuing education, like all those things that we all write off because
Like as an owner that you might take advantage of and say, oh, the business is paying. But that you need to consider that as your income, is what you're saying.
it is. It is, because it's your choice to spend that money on yourself through your business. You could choose to just keep that money and not spend it on that thing, and it wouldn't affect the operation of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the term that we use. And so the way that you can find that number for yourself is if you're looking at your P&L, the net income plus any salary that you pay yourself through payroll,
Mm-hmm.
plus any of those discretionary expenses. And so to put some numbers around that, like if let's say a spa business is doing 500,000 a year in gross revenue, and the owner's paying themselves a salary of 50,000 a year, and then there's 50,000 in profit after that. We would add those two numbers together and say there's 100,000 in discretionary earnings, and then we would multiply it by 2 and 3, and that gives a nice range of setting expectations that like 2 to 300,000 is a realistic sale price for that type of business.
Is that a multiple that is the same in other industries? Like, where did that multiple come from?
It is very normal for owner operator type businesses, retail, restaurants, things like that. It's primarily driven, honestly, by the SBA, and that's the Small Business Administration. It's a government organization that creates the only loan that's out there to buy a business. And so this is really important. I talk about this a lot, and sometimes people sort of black out, and I totally get it. But it's really important for buyers to be able to get a loan to buy your business. And the way that SBA works is they require the last 3 years of your tax returns.
Mhm.
And because it's a government program, there's lots of red tape, there's lots of paperwork. It's annoying and tedious, but the terms are really attractive. The buyer only has to put 10% down, and then the term of the loan is 10 years.
Oh,
And
that's good.
so if you were selling your business for $300,000, your buyer only has to have 30,000.
Mhm.
And that opens up the possibilities to lots more buyers. Maybe it's your manager or one of your service providers or a client. There's a lot more people who have 30,000 in savings than there are who have 300,000. And furthermore, the people who have 300,000 in their savings tend to want to invest it in things that they don't then have to operate.
And work out for 60 hours a week. Right.
Right. And deal with HR and staff
Right.
management and
That's
all
of
of
course.
those. And so getting qualified as a business to get that loan becomes critical. And so what people need to know is that in order for a buyer to get an SBA loan, both the buyer and the business have to qualify. And it's much harder to qualify the business than the buyer. The way
That's
that
interesting. So it's not just on the buyer, it's on you as the seller.
Right. And so essentially,
What are some roadblocks to qualify?
the most common one that I see is people not showing their profit on their tax returns, because tax returns are the ultimate thing that the bank is going to look at. And so, you spend all of your years writing off everything that you can to minimize your tax liability, because that's what's one of the reasons we own these businesses, right? It's like playing the game so that you don't have to give your money to the IRS. But when it's time to sell, that comes back to bite you. And so if you can just remember this, and when you start thinking about selling, it's worth it to show all your profit. Don't write that stuff off. Don't hide personal expenses in your business expenses, and then you'll get a lot more value in the sale.
So that if I'm understanding you right, if I'm writing off 10,000 a year in personal expenses, so that I don't pay the tax on that. And let's say the tax is at 28%, right? So $2,800. So I save myself 2,800. But you're saying if I put that 10,000 into my profit, I might get 30,000 for it.
That's correct, which is 10 times more.
10 times more than the 2,800 I saved. That's a really important lesson, Mitch.
It is. And you don't have to do it every year. It's most important that you do it the year before you sell. And then it's second most important to do it 2 years before you sell.
Mm-hmm.
3 is better than 2, 2 is better than 1 is infinitely better than none. So that's just, especially at a time like we're coming up on the end of the year, people are going to start filing their taxes again in a couple of months. Like, think about this, talk to your CPAs about it, and make sure that you're really clear on what your goals are for next year. If selling is included in one of your goals, don't write off stuff that you shouldn't be writing off.
So lesson number one, show your profit. I guess it goes without saying, but you need to have reliable, financials to show. I mean, we
Critical.
see both of us, I'm sure we see plenty of businesses. As a consultant, that's the first thing I do is say, let's look at your P&L. And it's like, sometimes it's really helpful and sometimes it's not helpful at all.
It's true. It's critical to have clean books and clean accounting. And so if you don't have access to regular profit and loss statements, like if you have a bookkeeper that's not providing monthly updates to your profits and losses, you need to find a new bookkeeper or correct that with them.
Mm-hmm. Well, we say in consultant, or as my job as an educator, I mean, this is a numbers business. It's a business. Like if you need to make money, then you need to know what your numbers are. And no, we don't want you to be an accountant, but you need to know what are your levers? What should my profit look like? What should my expenses look like? So that if you read that monthly P&L and something's off, you'll catch it, and you won't find out 6 months later. And it's so much more money under the water, under the bridge, right?
Right. And not looking at it doesn't make it better. It's very
The ostrich approach.
Yeah, it's just, if you're stressed about money and you feel like money is tight, it's a very human thing to not want to look at it. And one thing I would just offer to everyone is that there's never any judgment in anything that I do. Numbers are what they are. It's not good or bad or, an energetic attachment to that. It's just how can we get you as much money as possible in the sale? And so if you're looking at your P&L and it's showing no profit, can you get it to 50,000? How long will it take? You
Mhm.
know, if you hang that next to your mirror and make that your goal for the next year, what are the chances that you're going to get there? They're way higher. You're manifesting it on a daily basis. It keeps you
Right.
from buying that thing that you don't need or letting something slide when you shouldn't. And so it's always just working towards whatever goal you have as an owner and being aware of it and focusing on it and even bringing your team on board around it. I think I've seen a lot of really great owners share their P&Ls with their staff because a lot of times like staff think that the owners make so much money.
It's so true, and they don't. They think that you're wallpapering your place with dollar bills, and it's like they don't see the invoices, the expenses. I agree with that approach.
Yeah. And then everyone's on the same team, and if there's any incentives, if your management or your staff is incentivized with bonuses or something like that, then everyone gets on board with raising revenue and decreasing expenses and everyone wins.
No, that's a great approach. So, okay, prep is having clean financials and then making sure you're showing your profit. What's next in the equation?
The next one is extracting yourself from a day-to-day operational role. And so this is one that I think everybody always resonates with. They're like, "Oh, that sounds amazing."
Mhm.
But the reality is when we start these businesses, we wear every hat. Most of the time it's you're a service provider, you're the manager, you're the owner, you're the buyer, you're um, the plumber, the
Right.
housekeeper, like it's everything. Um, but as we grow and put team members in place and create policies and procedures and things like that, the more important it is to pull yourself out of the day to day and empower the people who are on your team to do what they're supposed to do.
Hmm.
So the reason when you're going to sell that this is so important, if you wear all of the hats in your business, you're going to be very difficult to replace. And so it makes it very hard to sell your business if everything relies on you. And so I see
How would a buyer find that out?
it's all part of the due diligence process. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the process in a moment, but
Okay.
ultimately it takes a long time to sell your business. I mean, on average, we say it takes 8 or 9 months.
All right, good to know.
And during that time, buyers look at everything. And it's not just the buyers, the lender will look at everything. Their underwriting process is intense.
Mhm.
And they want to be really clear on what your role is as the owner and what the buyer's role is going to be. Are they going to have to hire someone to be a manager? What's that going to do to the cash flow? Because the bank wants to make sure that there's going to be enough cash flow that they're going to get their money back. And so, if you're the owner and you're not paying yourself a salary and you're providing 20 services a week and you're the manager and you're doing this and that, the bank's going to step in and say, that's not right. If you were going to replace yourself, you would need to pay two people $50,000 each. And so that 100,000 in profit just disappears
Right.
and they won't underwrite the loan. And
So
so
it's a little more complicated than selling your house in one weekend.
it's way more complicated, which is why we charge more. It's a normal real estate agent makes, it's 5 or 6% of the sale. And for us, it's usually 10 to 12.
Mhm.
And that's the reason why
It
it's
takes longer and there's more work to do. Got
much
it.
more specialized. It's
Uh-huh.
not easy for people to jump into this profession. And
So
it's
owners
a lot
need to
more
back
dramatic.
off of teaching classes or performing treatments or being the manager, or at least show that they're being paid for those things.
Correct.
And the business can still be profitable. Because, of course, if you're doing treatments in a treatment room and you come out, someone else has to go in and they have to get paid to do those treatments. So, Okay. Good way to think about it. All righty.
Here's one more thing I would say is that, people, especially in a spa type business, a lot of times people are very attached to the person who provides that service.
Mm-hmm.
This is very true of me. I have had the same massage therapist for something like 13 years now.
Wow, you're very loyal, Mitch.
I am, but when you finally find the right one, it's why would you go anywhere else?
Just like hair, any of it. Yeah, it's very personal.
And so if that's you as the owner of the business, there's a higher likelihood that those clients won't stay on.
Mm.
And then the second aspect of that I'll mention that comes up a lot is that always in these deals, there's a non-compete agreement, which means that you as the seller can't then go and start providing, the same service from your house for your favorite clients and take those clients away from the business that you just sold.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, is it geographic or a time-bound agreement?
It's usually both. The most common for me, just generically, is 5 miles in 5 years. It depends on the area that you're in. If you live in a dense urban area, 5 miles is a long way.
Right.
If you live in the middle of nowhere, 5 miles is nothing. And so it really depends. And this is always a negotiation between the buyer and the seller, but it's just important to remember, I think, people make this mistake a lot. They think they can sell their business and then keep this small portion of it that serves them the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, unless you fully disclose that and your buyer is completely on board with it, that's not the case.
That makes sense. I mean, you want to protect the new buyer wants to keep the business as it was. And is that non-compete enforceable in California?
Ooh, that's a lawyer question, which I am not a lawyer. I do have access to a lot of these conversations, and I will say that it's certainly a debatable question.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people take both sides of that argument. But even just on an energetic level, I don't, it's not right to sell your business on how much money it's making and then take a portion of that business away.
No, it's bad karma. Okay, good to know. And in other states, of course, they don't have the stringent requirements California does. But, I suppose you also have that just because you want people to think really clearly about what they're doing and the impact it's going to have on them and the people that buy it and all the customers as well. You have to think about this.
Right. And I would argue it has less to do with what states you're in, to do with what your buyer wants and expects and what's written into the purchase agreement.
Okay. All right. So next, what is the thing we look for?
So next, I think people usually want to hear about the process. Like, what does it actually look like to sell my, what are the steps? How do I do it? And so I'll start by saying that it is a difficult process. It's usually a very emotional one, for anyone who's started their own business and birthed it and grew it, raised it, and turned it into the mature adult that it is now. It's very difficult to let go of it, let alone have someone else come in and start asking you really pointed questions about it, maybe even criticizing it in certain ways. It's the metaphor that I hear a lot from sellers, like having someone go through your underwear drawer. It's just it's too personal. And at the same time, paranoid. And so sellers are defensive, buyers are paranoid. That's a terrible mix. They're not the right person to support each other energetically at all.
That's the psychologist, Mitch. Yes.
Right. And so that's where I step in. I've been a buyer, I've been a seller. It's easy for me to both. And so I'm there to give the buyer the support that they need and to give the seller the support that they need and communicate back and forth what needs to be communicated to move the deal forward. And so process-wise, the first thing I would say is that, again, it takes 8 to 9 months on average, which means, sometimes it could be 6, sometimes it could be 12. usually starts with evaluation. Like I would do a consult with somebody, ask them to send me their P&Ls, do that exercise of adding back anything that we could add back, and then ultimately suggest what I think the right asking price would be given the situation. If the seller's in agreement, then we sign a contract, much like a real estate agent. It's like a 6-month exclusive right to sell agreement. Is out our fees, expectations, very normal in that sense. From that point, we then market the business for sale on a number of different websites. BizBuySell.com is the main website.
That's Biz, B-U-Y, sell.
Correct. BizBuySell. And it's a website. If you've never been on there, it's the Craigslist of businesses for sale. And having been a business owner, I think anybody can look at that and have fun thinking about all the things that they could do and make more. But in addition to that, we're actually big advocates for owners and sellers to be at least a little bit open with their team and their community about their intention to sell. And this usually freaks most owners out. I think
Oh, sure, because it could be 6 months till you do.
It could be a lot longer. It might even, what I usually recommend, honestly, is that you start having these conversations years before you sell. And that makes it less scary or threatening for staff. But it humanizes it. And like, there's no reason for anyone to be surprised that an owner wants to sell their business. Like I said before,
it's a thing that one does, right?
But if it's not happening right now, you can phrase it in a way that's like, hey, Lisa, I know that you're really into this. You're doing great. You're taking care of this business. Think of anyone better to take over than you. And so if you're interested, let me know. I'd be happy to talk about it anytime. I'd be happy to help support you and show you more about what it's like to be an owner. But obviously, no pressure. Again, this isn't going to happen anytime soon. I just wanted to put it out there because I would love to keep it in the family. That's it. And so I call this planting seeds. And so what you've done then is you've, one, given them a heads up that you're thinking about this on any level. Two, you've given them the huge compliment. Everybody always receives that as an enormous compliment, which they should, that they have what it takes to be that person. And then it gives them time to go figure out how they're going to do it, if they want to do it. Maybe they have a corporate job that they hate and it gives them time to get out of that. Buying a business is a huge decision. It takes people a significant amount of time to wrap their brain around it. And so, anyway, sorry, I'll get off this soapbox, but it's, so we market the business to the public, and then we encourage the owner to approach a couple people in the community as well, because more often than not, those people are not looking at Biz Buy Sell to see if that particular business is for sale.
Could some of these people be your clients?
Absolutely.
Like what happened to you and your wife?
Yeah, ours was actually a competitor. So I would put clients, competitors, staff, managers all into a bucket of people who are within the community. And
let them know. And how far ahead you're saying? A year? Maybe more?
Yeah, anytime. Anytime. I mean, there's truly, I don't think that harm can come of this. I think people are always worried about someone quitting. There's no reason for someone to quit upon hearing this news, especially if it's not imminent or there's nothing to be afraid of attached to this. Where I do hear people worry about quitting is when owners say, I'm not making any money. I'm either going to have to sell this or shut it down.
That's a different statement.
That's very different than I have this amazingly successful business that I'm going to have to step away from at some point. Are you interested in taking over?
Okay, good to make that distinction.
Okay, so to jump back to process. So once we've listed the business, we put it up on the websites, we're talking to anyone in the community that we can. As brokers, we help buyers as much as possible. And so they're asking questions, we're getting answers. If they're looking for lending, we're helping them find the right lender. And then, we're also helping with all of the legal documents. So letters of intent, bill of sale, asset purchase agreement, like all of those things that are needed for deals like this. We have templates that are derived from, thousands of deals that are perfect for this. And so it spares anybody having to pay an attorney to draft those agreements.
Mhm.
You do always have to recommend is that you then have an attorney review it on your behalf, because we're not attorneys. And so once an offer is made, usually with a letter of intent, it's a non-binding, like 2 or 3 page document that basically just lays out the general terms. And we might negotiate a little, but once we come to an agreement, then we draft the purchase agreement, which is the actual binding contract, which is the roadmap to the finish line.
Mm.
The purchase agreement lays out all of the contingencies in a deal. And so normally the contingencies are due diligence, which is a period, usually not more than a month, where the buyer gets access to all of your most sensitive financial information. So certainly tax returns, but also commonly bank statements, payroll reports,
Mhm.
things like that.
Does that include things like employee handbooks and compensation schemes and all of that as well?
It's everything.
Okay.
This is the point, and it's scary for sellers to share all of this stuff, and that's why we wait until this purchase agreement is signed. Also at the moment the purchase agreement gets signed, an earnest money deposit opens up escrow, just like with the house. And so there's some money in the bank that's on the line, showing that they're really committed to doing this. And in addition to due diligence, at that point, we reach out to the landlord to apply for lease assignment.
Mhm.
If it's a franchise, we reach out to the franchisor to apply for franchise assignment. And then if there's lending involved, we're working with the lender to get the loan done. And once all of those things are checked off, then you actually close. And so that whole period is the most uncertain,
Mm.
stressful time. And people are always blown away by the fact they're like, oh my God, I finally just accepted an offer. We signed this purchase agreement.
And it's
And
just
then
the
it actually
beginning, right?
gets more stressful from there until the finish line. And it's not done until it's done. And so those last couple months, usually escrow takes 2 to 3 months, depending on whether or not there's financing involved. And so it's intense.
So this is really good to set examples for what to expect. You mentioned the asset assignment. Could we talk a little bit about that? What qualifies as an asset?
So there are 2 different types of purchase agreements. There's asset purchase agreements and stock purchase agreements. And 99.9% of the deals done in this industry are asset purchase agreements. And the primary reason is that in an asset purchase agreement, the buyer creates their own new entity, like an LLC or a corporation. And that new entity purchases all of the assets of your entity. And so that includes everything. It's, the brand, the customer list, all of the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, inventory, all of that stuff. But the reason we do it that way is that it's a clear break in terms of liability. So the seller is protected from what comes after, and the buyer is protected from everything that came before.
Mhm.
The only circumstances where we do stock purchase agreements are if there are contracts that are non-transferable.
Mm.
So a good example for this would be like a physical therapist that has contracts with health insurance providers. Those aren't transferable. And so if somebody's buying that physical therapist business and 80% of the money comes from insurance companies, they have to be able to keep that money coming from the insurance company. And so in that scenario, you actually buy the shares of the seller's corporation to keep that all intact. That's very uncommon and usually requires an attorney to draft a completely different agreement with a lot more language about liability.
Okay. So an asset is an asset in our case, whether or not it's really worth a lot, but inventory, FF&E. What about the intangibles like your mailing list or your client database?
It's all part of it.
It's all
Those
part-
are assets.
Okay. All right. So you've had this year-long journey, you've prepared, you sold your business. What are some of the hurdles that people should expect may come up in the process?
That there will be hurdles and there will be unpredictable ones. There's all sizes. Expect them, I would say is the first step. But the most common ones that I experience, landlords can be difficult. If you're coming up on the end of your lease, that can be a huge hurdle because you then have to have your buyer negotiate with the landlord, and that can affect the purchase of your business. If your landlord raises the rent a whole bunch, then the profit's going to change. And so that can be a big one. Cold feet is a big one. These deals take a long time. And so the excitement of buying a business and taking over generally wears off during the escrow period. And everyone has like a family member or friend who's in their ear telling them that this is a bad idea or that the valuation's too high or that the sky's going to fall, like in any number of things. But cold feet's very normal, and sellers actually get cold too. A lot of times they'll start questioning whether or not this is the right decision. It's whether or not it's the right amount of money. Those things are all very normal. Attorneys can be difficult if you don't have the right kind of attorney. The role of the attorney should be to get the deal done, not to make it so good for you that the other party isn't going to move forward. And then lending. Lender banks are probably the most difficult part of everything I do. They take a long time. They ask for a ton of paperwork, and for SBA loans in particular, it's you have to, the things you have to do are crazy, but like as a buyer, you have to get a life insurance policy that's just for the lender. You let them put a lien on your house. There's a number of things that are fairly dramatic, that they're always going to make sure they get paid if something goes wrong. Those are the biggest ones.
Can we elaborate for a moment on the SBA loan approach? You go to your local bank for that option, correct?
Yes. So SBA is a government institution, but banks all over the country are part of that program. And so every bank is allowed to admit loans, but they have to follow the SBA's guidelines. And so it's fairly consistent between banks. At the same time, banks have their own judgment about whether or not they're willing to lend to you. So some are harder than others. But in general, it's safe to say like big national banks are much more difficult to work with than like your local credit union, especially depending on the size of the deal. Like Bank of America or Chase isn't going to touch anything that's under $500,000. Truthfully, they want 5 million or more. Your local credit union might be part of the SBA program that does loans under 250,000. And so they're just a lot more geared towards smaller local deals.
And I guess it behooves the bank because the SBA is partnering with them in essence and helps to underwrite that risk.
Yeah, they're actually insuring it. And so if something, as long as the bank follows the right guidelines, if something goes wrong and the buyer defaults, they can actually turn to the SBA for an insurance claim.
Okay, Mitch, let's talk about something that's common on the salon spa side, spas and wellness businesses in particular, which would be the outstanding gift card liability.
It's part of everything.
So many owners that I work with don't even know what it is. And it's like, what do you mean? You owe this money.
Yeah, so it can be an issue, but it doesn't need to be, because as long as it's acknowledged from the beginning, it's not a surprise. But you're absolutely right. The reality is that even though these are asset purchase agreements, which is intentionally keeping the buyer from assuming any debts that the seller has, the one liability that they inherit is the outstanding gift cards. Or if it's a fitness business, like outstanding class packages, And so in that regard, that's money that you as the seller have already taken for a service that you have not yet provided. And so if your buyer takes over, they're on the hook for providing that service, but they didn't get paid for it. And so it's all I would really say about this is that it's really important to know what the total amount of outstanding gift cards or liabilities are, to disclose it from the very beginning, LOI stage for sure, and to come to an agreement about it. And generally, the best agreement that I've ever found is 50% of the outstanding value, because
Should be where? In cash?
just as a credit on the deal. So if it were a $300,000 deal and you had 50,000 in outstanding gift cards, shifting the purchase price essentially from 300 to 275.
Mm-hmm.
And that protects the buyer. That, they're getting something for those outstanding packages, but it also, the seller's not paying dollar for dollar on it, because who knows if those things are ever going to get used. It's also probably a client that's going to continue to buy things from the business, and so there's benefit in handing over that client.
Mm-hmm.
And 50% is, both sides are usually equally disappointed with that, which makes it a fair deal.
Equal disappointment. What a great approach. Now, how about memberships, Mitch? Fitness or spas that have a membership program, how is that impacted?
It really helps. And recurring revenue is the driver of this whole industry, and the industry is largely based on this model. And I've seen more and more salons and spas create membership programs to have that recurring revenue. And so it's really attractive to buyers because they have more faith that there's consistent income on the horizon. Generally, when we're talking about like packages and things like that, memberships don't come into play because the money comes in every month, and so there's no need to like prorate. You'll just get paid next month. And so that's really helpful in that regard too.
Well, it certainly sounds good to have recurring income. I guess as a buyer, are you worried that those will stay? I mean, that they will continue to do business with you? How, as a buyer, can you mitigate that risk of people leaving the business once you take over the clients?
It's an important question. And so I would say again, it's important that the business not around you as the seller. If there's no incentive for employees to leave if their job is safe and their income remains consistent. Mm-hmm. And so as long as those things are true, there's really no reason for a buyer to be afraid. It's a normal fear. I mean, some level of fear is understandable, but I don't see that happen in practice. As long as, a new owner doesn't come in and cut people's pay, it should be all right.
So I'm curious, in your case, Mitch, you and your wife sold your yoga studio. She's an instructor. Did she go to work for someone else, or did she decide to stay home and raise your kids?
Well, we had a non-compete just like everybody else does, and it was 5 years. And we live in a small beach town in San Diego, and so it meant that she couldn't, anywhere near home. And so she actually stepped out of teaching in the studio, and then COVID happened, honestly.
Right. You had good timing.
Well, yeah. And then except that I went to try and sell these businesses. Nobody was buying them during COVID because they were all shut down. But she had actually, this is kind of crazy. She wanted to start teaching online more when we sold at the beginning of 2019. So she created a platform through NamaStream in 2019 and had a membership model based on that. And so when COVID happened, it exploded. She already had everything in place, and hundreds of people joined. Since then, times have changed, and so she's very eager to get back into the studio and connect with people in person. Our non-compete is up on January 1st, and so I'll be curious what she wants to do next.
Well, good luck to her. And it sounds like it's been really good for you. Your practical experience has really helped you fill a niche that is needed, in this industry. Any other words of advice for listeners?
Just use trusted advisors and reach out. I'm always happy to talk. There's never any pressure or commitment required. Genuinely just want to help people in this industry get paid when they're ready to be done, and also to put their business in the hands of someone who's hungry to grow it. I think we all sort of lose steam after a while, and the community can continue to thrive and grow after you. And I think acknowledging that and being okay with it is a healthy way to exit.
Can you let our listeners know what your website URL is, Mitch?
Yes, it's boutiquefitnessbroker.com. Our Instagram handle is at boutiquefitnessbroker. You can reach me, Mitch, at boutiquefitnessbroker.com. And you're welcome to just follow along on social media or join our newsletter. You can download our guide on how to sell your business straight from our website. We're here to help and genuinely just want the best for everyone in this industry.
Well, thank you for illuminating us today. And honestly, you're the nicest, calmest guy. If I was going to sell my business or buy it, I would definitely want to do it with you. Thanks, Mitch, again for joining us. Mitch McGinley of Boutique Fitness Broker, San Diego. And I will see you sometime soon at the next conference, I'm sure.
Thanks so much, Lisa.